I go 3 without doing anything, so single crochets, so 1.
And if that's the case, you would have to go.
Okay. In the pattern, that's written, right? So you can just follow that. At this moment, I'm not looking at the pattern. It doesn't matter because it's always, was doing a hat, for example, this is my increased one. I don't want something that has waves if I'm doing just a beanie, for example, right? Stitches with single crochets. Would like some, because it's, when we start, it's kind of overwhelming to look and you don't understand anything. I'm going to X production is I still think it could be a little
How can
that the circle cannot see well that 2 loops, right? One comes, 1, 4. So I go, and have you noticed that every single time I'm not closing my circle? See, this one I did too tight. I'm not closing my circle. I keep the round, so it goes on a spiral all the time.
Gotcha.
Okay, so 1.
The fact that it's too tight just makes it harder for you. Doesn't change anything else, right?
No, well, it's a smaller doll at the end if it's too tight, but it's a lot harder. So you have to get into the habit of not doing that too tight. And like I said, if you don't pay attention.
But you were talking earlier about
my first increase here, so I did 4 single, and now I'm doing 2 on the same stitch. Go ahead.
You were talking earlier about doing the little dolls, the tiny little dolls.
Tiny little dolls.
In those cases, they will probably use a much thinner thread, and then are the stitches a lot tighter?
Well, they will be proportional to the hook that they are using and the thread. So yes, they are going to be tiny. I don't dare make those exactly because of that. I think, first of all, I would need better glasses.
Yeah.
It's harder, and no wonder they are expensive. That's, since we are doing this, naturally, and I'm just doing 4 single crochets and then an increase. Like right now, it's an increase. I go under the chain, right? And I do a single crochet, and then I go under again on exactly the same stitch, and I do another single crochet. That's the stitch. People don't tend to understand. There was a thread the other day on a social network that the woman was actually complaining that she was selling an amigurumi doll, and I think she asked, I don't know the size of the doll or anything, but I think she asked 100 and something for the doll. And the person really said, are you crazy? This is not worth more than $15 or $20.
Oh, wow.
Well, and she was hurt, rightly so. Why did that happen? The misconception that people have with crafts as a whole, right? Because when they look at the piece, they see, my marker is getting in my way. When they see the piece, they think, well, she's only using, this much yarn. Therefore, I can buy a skein of yarn for $5. It's not worth more than 10, 3 times the yarn. That's the big misconception with price. We are going to another round here. So now I did 4. I'm going to do 5.
Okay, and this might answer Susan's question on the chat. Thank you, Susan, for asking your question. We certainly appreciate it. What row are we on?
So let's count, because I have the pattern here, by the way. It's just that I have to go down there. First one was 6. I started with a magic ring with 6, right? Then I went to 12. I did an increase in every single stitch. Then I started 1 single crochet, 1 increase, 1 single, 1 increase. That was row 3. Then I did 2 singles, 1 increase, 2 singles, 1 increase. Right now, I just, then 2 singles, 1 increase. Then I had 3 singles, 1 increase. And this one was 4, 1 increase. So it's row 6, Susan. But again, if I get my pattern, I just follow the lines and no big deal, right? I would know I'm on row 6. for the increases, what we are going to do for the head is go up to when I do 6 singles and 1 increase. That's when I stop the increasing and I start lowering the head and getting really the shape. So you are going to see, still, again, because these dolls are small, you don't see much here, right? It's tiny.
So let's get a close-up on the doll.
Where do I go? Where do I go? Follow the river. Okay, so I still have a tiny crochet and it's a flat piece.
Yes.
You see, the moment I start just repeating the single crochets and stop the increase, I will start shaping the head, Susan. So we are on row 6, going right now to 7, which will be 5 single crochets and then 1 increase. Okay, so if you crochet along, that's where you should be or close to that. Thank you for the question, by the way.
It makes me happy to know that Susan and others are out there actually following along.
Yeah, it's fun. Oh, look, I did the same. See, I tied my stitch. So again, that's why I like live. I tell you what, you find tons of tutorials online, and they are edited, so they look perfect, right? The person does this, and it seems so simple. And then you start making yourself, and you go through a nightmare sometimes,
yes,
and you don't even know why. Well, even if you're experienced, like here, we are chatting, and there is pressure, right? Because there is a timer, there are cameras. Well, I just tied my stitch a lot, right? So it's going to be difficult to come through I will have to use some help here. It's still doable, but you see that happens normally. So now I do 5 singles, 1, and then I move along. Going through both loops of my chain, 2,